Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to walk through how I lift up my Porsche 911 Turbo onto 4 jack stands. Now it's actually a pretty simple process. It makes it a little bit harder depending on if your car is lowered or not, like mine. So it's a little bit lower and just harder to access to get the jack and things under there. But relatively easy process. So today I'm just going to walk through that and show you how I do it. So there's a few different items you're going to need to actually get your car up off the ground. One of course is being a jack, especially you're going to want a low profile jack. I have this Daytona 3-ton low profile, which I got from Harbor Freight. Pro tip, never buy anything from Harbor Freight unless it's on sale. I think I got this on sale for 130 bucks. So it's a pretty good deal. I also have their Pittsburgh non-Daytona version for the low profile 3-ton as well. This one's definitely a little bit nicer, but they both work. You really only need one jack. I'm just going to use one jack today, but you can use two. There's a few different ways to do this. So you're going to need your jack, of course. You're going to want a jack pad that is specific to the Porsche lift pads, that they have a little oval cutout underneath the car, and they have these pads that kind of set in there. Some of them lock in, some of them don't. This one doesn't. It just sits there. I think it was a couple bucks on Amazon. You don't need anything special. You're going to need jack stands, of course. You're going to want jack stands that have the flat tops. You're not going to want the more axle style stands that are the V, meant for more body on frame type vehicles. You're going to want the flat stands. Now I have two different sets here. I have a set of the Daytona flat 3-ton stands. I believe those are 3 tons. Yeah, the flat 3-ton stands. And then I also have the Esco stands, which both are pretty popular. Esco was the original kind of design or brand that made these style of stands. So I've had these Esco ones for a long time. They are more expensive, which is why I end up getting the Daytonas for a second set. So that way I have 4 to get the entire car off the ground. And then if you don't have a second 4 jack, you are going to need some sort of a wheel crib. So I have a couple of wheel cribs here. But like I said, you can either use those or you can have a second jack stand. And I'll explain as I go through why that is. But this is really all you need to get your 997 off the ground. Now, two things that may be a little bit different for you than for me here. I have these tile floors in my garage, which are plastic, and they look great, and they are great for most things, except for jacking up cars. So if I were to jack up this car or any car with just my 3-ton jack there, I would likely dent this floor. I've done it in the past. That's how I learned my lesson. So I do throw a piece of wood underneath my jack just to protect my floor. Now, you don't have to do this, obviously, if you're just working on concrete, but this is something that I have to do. So an extra step that I'm taking that you probably don't have to. The other thing that's different than what you might have to do, this car is lower than stock. It's on lowering springs. So it's about an inch lower than the stock 997 Turbo S. So it is harder to get access to the jack pads under here. Obviously, there's one in the front, or one in the rear and one in the front. So what I do is I like to get this jacked up just a little bit, and then I throw a piece of wood under here. So I'm gonna throw just a I guess this is a 12 by 2 underneath the tire. And that just gives me better visibility for when I'm jacking up each side. It's really only important on this opposite side here. Yeah, those are the only two things that are gonna be slightly different that I'm doing that maybe you don't have to do. As you can see, there's not a ton of clearance here, especially with the car being lowered, plus I'm adding another 1/2 inch of thickness with this board underneath the jack. So on the opposite side, I am going to throw this 2x12 underneath the wheel, because once I lift up this side of the car and the car tilts over, that side of the car is going to be closer to the ground, obviously. So this just gives me a little extra clearance to get the jack under that side of the vehicle. Okay, so I've got the opposite side that I'm lifting first up on this 2x4. That way, as I lift the other side and this side starts to tilt a little bit closer to the ground, I just have enough access to get the jack under there when we come around and lift this side up. That's gonna be the second side that we lift. So it'll make sense as we do it. That's the first step to lifting at least a lowered 997 Turbo. All right, now that we've got that side prepped, we are going to actually start jacking up the driver's side of the car from the rear. So I've got the jack lined up on the rear pad here. We're gonna jack it up high enough so we can get this first jack stand underneath this front lifting point. And then we also are going to throw that wheel crib underneath the rear wheel. And that'll make sense here in a minute. Obviously we can't lift from the rear jack point and then put a jack stand underneath there. there's only one jack point. So that's where the difficulty comes in here, where we have to end up removing the jack, lifting from the rear, and then getting a jack underneath where that rear jack point is. It'll make sense. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it makes sense. Now always check your lifting point as you're starting to get it off the ground, just to make sure things are where they need to be. Nothing is shifting. Everything looks okay. We're gonna keep going up. So we're gonna go up until we can get that front jack stand underneath that front pad there. Now I know this looks kind of precarious, and it kind of is, but that's just the way you do it. All right. So, hopefully you can see here what I'm looking at. You can see how our pad lines up on our front jack point right there. So that's what that's gonna look like. So now that we got that there, we are gonna bring our wheel crib right under this rear wheel here. And this is just temporary. So we're gonna slowly bring down this jack. Watch that front jack point very closely. Make sure everything stays where it should as we bring the weight down onto this stand here. Just like that. Make sure nothing's shifting. Everything looks pretty good on the front half there. Now just take your time. There's no rush to this, so just go slow. All right, so now our car is fully supported on the front by that jack stand and in the rear by this crib. So now we move on to the next one. So now we're gonna repeat and do the exact same thing we did on the driver's side. We're gonna do that exact same thing on the passenger side now. So we're gonna lift it up, get that front stand under the front jack point, and then get this wheel crib under this rear wheel. Now, as the car is coming up, make sure to monitor the other side. Make sure that front stand is not shifting at all. Make sure everything stays where it should. It's good to be extra careful. It's easy to screw up if you're not paying attention. So that's what we're gonna do on this passenger side. Okay, now we're high enough to get our front stand under the front point. Now we're gonna swap this out. And we gotta go just a little bit higher for the rear. Perfect, okay. We're good there, we're good on the front. Now again, just pay very close attention. As you start to lower this down, you wanna make sure nothing's shifting on either side of the car. Just very important to, watch all aspects of where the car is being supported. And then just very slowly let it down. Watch where that front hits. Make sure it's where it needs to be. It looks okay. And now you can let it all the way out. All right, so now we have our car up in the air. So if you're just doing some work under the rear of the car here, oil changes or I don't know, minor exhaust work, things like that, where the wheels don't have to come off the rear. This is probably all you're gonna have to do. It's the easiest, way to get your car off the ground so you can actually get underneath it. And as long as you're not taking off the rear wheels, you can do most things from this service position. But that's not always the case. So the hardest part, or at least the part that makes this complicated, is, well, obviously we can't put a jack stand under here as we're lifting from here with our jack. So what we need to do is get these rear wheels up in the air, which we can do from the rear of the car now that it's up. So I'm gonna show you how to do that next. Okay, so as we go to lift up the rear of the car, we're gonna swap out our jack pad. So before we were using the Porsche one with the little, nipple on it that goes in the jack points on the car. I have a Volkswagen one that's used for pinch welds, again, on Amazon for a few bucks. I just flip this over, and that gives us just a nice flat pad to lift from on the rear subframe, which I'll show you. You can also use a hockey puck or whatever you have, even a piece of wood potentially. So just something that's not gonna mangle the, aluminum subframe. Okay, so now where you wanna get your jack lined up on the rear of the car, obviously here's the oil pan. So just in front of that is where the rear subframe sits. You can see where the sway bar connects in. You wanna go just behind where the sway bar comes in, and you'll see kind of this, little line here of the casting. You're gonna wanna lift from right in this area here. This is the strongest point where you can lift from in the rear. Now this is how we're gonna get the rear tires off the ground and get a jack stand under there. Now again, just keep paying attention to the front stands, make sure nothing's shifting dramatically. You don't want anything to move here. You want to make sure it's still stable up in the air. And as soon as we get this rear tire up like it is right now, we should be high enough for our jack stand to slide in, which we are. We can pull this out and make sure that our jack stand is aligned with our rear pad here, which it is. And then again, we're gonna bring it down very slowly. And just before the car touches the rear pad, we're gonna just double check and make sure that it's aligned correctly. Just a little bit there. Things change as the car goes up and down. So we just want to make sure we're still good here, which I think we are. And just bring it down nice and slow. Just like that. I know it might seem like I'm being overly cautious. Nothing wrong with that. I'd rather be a little bit more safe than sorry. And just like that, we are supported by our rear jack stand. Centered perfect. So now we're gonna do the exact same thing on the passenger side. Alrighty, so that's that. Now we have the whole car on jack stands. Simple as that. All right, so as you can see, it's really not too difficult to get the entire car up off the ground. I think it scares people more than anything. just because you're lifting one side at a time. It gets kind of cockeyed and it feels sketchy, but as long as you're paying attention, it's really not. There's other videos out there of how to get the car up. Pretty much every one of them involves using 2 floor jacks. Now that method works too. I encourage you to look at it, but I think this is just a little bit safer. Might be one extra step, but I prefer it. Like I said, I think it's a little safer. Prevents you from having to have 2 floor jacks if you don't already. And yeah, I don't know. I like it better. So it's really simple. Now to get the car back down, do the exact same thing in opposite order. So we would lift up the rear end that really, lift it up last, put that crib back under, and then do the same thing back here. And then we go back to the 2 cribs, and then we come back to the sides, lift and remove just like we did to get it up. So literally play this video in reverse, and that's exactly how you get the car back down. So yeah, now we have access to the entire car, really. The only thing you probably can't do from this height is drop an engine or something, but you definitely can get it higher if you want to. I have never tried, but I've seen other folks do it. You would just have to get a little bit more creative, and maybe it's a little bit more sketchy. But this is high enough to do most work, like I said, unless you're doing something really, really invasive. So that's that. Hopefully that helped you, at least provided a different method. I know that there's other videos out there, so this isn't completely unique, but yeah. So if you have any questions, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.